So in Dark Neostorm, we are getting new support for the Crusadia archetype, and technically mekk-knights as well, as the Link monster is also a mekk-knight, but that's besides the point. With this Crusadia support, I feel this is honestly quite surprising, as it's actually really good. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about why I feel the Crusadia support is actually very surprising, and overall my thoughts on the archetype. So mekk-knight Crusadia Astrom is a Link 4 light Cyberse effect monster that has 3000 attack. Its arrows are left, right, bottom left, bottom right. It requires 2+ monsters special summon from the extra deck, and it has the following effect. If this card was Link summoned, it cannot be targeted by an opponent's card effect. Also, your opponent cannot target monsters for attacks except this one. Once per damage calculation, when this card battles a special summon monster, you can have this card gain attack equal to the opponent's monster's attack during this damage calculation only. If this Link summoned card is sent to the graveyard by an opponent's card effect, you can shuffle one card on the field into the deck. So to start, this is a big boss monster, which is always pretty good. I mean, Masterpiece is a big boss monster, but that was an entirely separate card than a lot of other big boss monsters. You have cards like, I guess you can consider Borreload, and there's Borrel Sword. They're kind of big utility monsters, but that's besides the point. This is a big boss monster 100%, but it's also generic, so very easily you can summon this card by using 2 special summon monsters from the extra deck. And you might think that's actually pretty hard, but for a deck like Crusadia, if you were talking about in theme, it's actually not that difficult because you just need to set up the normal combo, which is the Crusadia Equimax with any Crusadia, link that Crusadia into a Magius, and from there you just link into this card. It's very easy to set up this card in pure Crusadia. But again, you can just set this up in any other deck as well. Scapegoat is this card, there's a lot of other options, so you can definitely make this card pretty easily. But why would you play this card? Well, it has protection from all targeting, which can be very scary for some decks. This includes Sky Striker, which have no good way of dealing with this card. Widow Anchor is good at dealing with the Borrel monsters, for example, sure, but because of this targeting protection, you cannot use Widow Anchor on this card. The only good out in Sky Strikers to this card, or inherent in-deck method, is actually to be using Jamming Waves. However, with the decrease in popularity of Jamming Waves, if Sky Striker is even relevant by the time Dark Neostorm comes out, then at that point we can maybe see Jamming Waves in the side deck, but besides that, Sky Strikers have a rough time with this card. Another example of a card slash deck that really can't deal with this card that well is actually Altergeist. Now yes, they have trap cards to deal with this, but with the in-theme cards, for example, we have Silkwitous, which cannot bounce this card because it can't be targeted, and you have Meluseek because Meluseek targets. So yes, this card is hard to deal with through card effects, but at the same time it's also hard to deal with in battle. So with that clause it has, this card has to be attacked. And what effect does it have? It has a battle effect. So during damage calc, you can add the attack of the opponent's monster is battling to this card, which in that case will make this card unable to die in that battle because it will have more attack. And while this effect is good defensively, it's also pretty good offensively if you just need to deal with a monster. If you're attacking into a Borreload, it can deal with that. A more random example, but the idea can be applied to other cards, is Blackwing Full Armor Master, because that's a tower, so if you ever need to deal with that, you can just link for this and kill it. But then again, you can also use Borrel Sword, which I'll talk more about that in a second, but just in general, this card can deal with any card like that. So because of everything, they have to be able to destroy it, send it, shuffle it, or just whatever non-targeting method you can use to get rid of this card. Technically, Ningirsu is a good out to this card as well, but besides that, it's really hard to deal with. If you don't have a way of dealing with this, then you're kind of screwed, because this card will just keep beating you down. Even a card like Ultimate Conductor Tyranno with 3500 attack that can basically deal with almost any problem card. It can deal with quite a lot of cards. One card it cannot deal with is this card, but even if it's sent to the graveyard, it'll just shuffle a card on the field into the deck. So even if you use Ningirsu on this card, that would mean that you get to shuffle it back into the extra deck, or again, whatever card, because it says card and not monster or spell/trap. So not only is this card hard to kill, but there is a stigma that you don't want to kill it because it will remove cards from from the field, or whatever card you committed to outing it. Sure, it doesn't provide control over when you can shuffle, but regardless, it's still generic to the point that it can be made in so many decks, and so easy to make in Crusadia. This card may not seem as good as Borreload and Borrelsword, but actually can be played in the place of those two. Borreload deals with problem monsters, and Borrelsword just outputs crazy amounts of damage. However, this card is just flat out very hard to kill, and if you need a card that can deal with hard to deal with monsters very efficiently, but at the same time is hard to deal with in of itself, then, well, this is the card for you. Is it being a mekk-knight and a Crusadia really relevant, however? Not necessarily, but it can be relevant. So you can summon this under World Legacy's memory, but besides that, it doesn't do anything notable except with the new quick play spell I'll get to in a second. It can use itself for Crusadia Magius and has other neat interactions with Purple Nightfall, for example, but again, besides the quick play spell, not many interactions. Mekk-knight Crusadia Astrom is definitely a great card, but we still have one more card to talk about, and that card is Crusadia Testament. Crusadia Testament is a quick play spell with the following effect. You can only activate one card with this card's name per turn. Activate one of these effects. For the rest of this turn, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to the activation of your Crusadia monster's effects. Or the second option being after damage calc, if your Crusadia Link monster destroyed an opponent's monster by battle, draw cards equal to that monster's Link rating. This card is bonkers in theory, but may not be as good in practice. Think about it this way. The draw effect is obviously what's so good about this card. I mean, you can easily draw 3 to 4 cards with this. However, the issue is this deck can consistently kill your opponent. Like, why would I rather draw 3 cards when I can just win the duel outright? Crusadia is such an efficient OTK strategy, and I really feel like this card can kind of just go against the entire point of what this deck wants to do, which is OTK. Sure, this card embraces the idea of going second, but it embraces it in the opposite direction, giving you the idea of keeping the game going rather than just finishing it right there. I mean, this deck can definitely grind it out. I mean, they do generically have good disruption and a great grind game, with, for example, a card like Equimax being just a quick play negate for any card, which is obviously really good, but at the same time, they just have such great kill potential. And so it really comes down to, can the Crusadia deck kill your opponent in one turn, or do they just draw 3? I still think that this card is bonkers regardless, and this card might be good enough to warrant an entirely different style of play, because drawing 3 to 4 cards is just so good, especially when we now have Astrom that is a link for Crusadia, and it's not bad to end on at all. The other effect on this card isn't bad either, being able to protect all of your Crusadia monsters' effects and making sure that they resolve. This effect definitely helps out with enabling your OTKs, being able to prevent your cards from being Solemn Striked, for example, or Ghost Spelled, or whatever. But I do think that the second effect is much more crazy and will surely be something to look out for. Overall, these two cards are great support for Crusadia, and while I don't really know how this deck will end up in the end, I can definitely say I wasn't anticipating this for the archetype. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you want to support me further than just watching my YouTube videos, go down into the description and support me on Patreon. It helps out quite immensely. As well, if you guys want to talk to me further than just my YouTube comment section, go down into the description and join my Discord server. Thank you guys so much for watching, and with that, I hope to see you soon.